There's a lot of information every league. Which relic you should pick, which region is the best for your endgame build, and on top of that, now they've introduced Path of Exile to Old School Runescape. So today, I'll be giving you 3 easy builds to follow that are good to insane DPS nearing the late game. I've defined Noob-Friendly as your build is already online and doing DPS as you are grinding for the items that you need for your build. For example, when you're grinding Echo KBD, your build will already be strong, but it'll get even stronger once you get the drop you need. This because some builds require you to reset your Demonic Pacts tree a couple of times before it actually gets online, so you never really get to play the build that you are working towards. I define that as kinda complicated. Now, for anyone who's not up to date with the skill tree yet, or is incredibly overwhelmed seeing it for the first time and then just closing it down, first of all, I understand. But don't worry, I'll hold your hand through this one. I'll explain why this tree is important now, and then we'll get into the builds, regions, and relics. We will be able to reset this tree up to 3 times this league. This is not only to make sure that you can go back once you made a wrong decision, but it's also going to be necessary if you don't want to be slacking early on. That's why I've created 2 easy leveling trees. These you can follow just so you can get started by already dishing out some nice DPS when you're on your way to kill your first Echo boss. Keep in mind that the efficient thing to do during a league is not mind combat at all in the first couple hours and just knock out skills and do tasks, maybe unlock your first region, maybe even your second, before you even start thinking about this skilling tree and doing combat. But once you're ready to do combat, you need some points to spend in this skilling tree. The way you get these is by doing specific Demonic Pact tasks. Depending on which region you unlock first, you can probably easy do 8 to 12 of these tasks to get you started. I've linked this full wiki page in the description, by the way, so you can check for your own regions. The first leveling build works around the Hunter's Sunlight Crossbow. You can get this weapon and the bolts with 72 Hunter and 74 Fletching. If you pick the Abundance Relic as your tier 1, you even get a plus 10 permanent skilling boost, so you'll get there even quicker. This build will give you strong damage because this crossbow node will make it so you always max hit, and the one right next to it will give you very good accuracy. And we're going to be doing even more damage once we shoot off occasional ranged echoes when we regenerate ammo, which is also in the tree. You can get this build online with 11 points, and the more Demonic Pact tasks you complete, the stronger you can make this build by getting these 3 tiles to proc even more ranged echoes. The second leveling build you can instantly get started with if you want. Since Xanaris will be available from the start of the league, you'll be able to buy a Dragon Dagger if you have a diamond to enter the weapon store. With this, you can spec into the one-handed melee side of the tree, making your attacks faster and making you regenerate special attacks. You can pair this with Thorns and an Obi Shield to get some extra hits in, which will make a fast, pacey early build compared to the slower crossbow build I've mentioned before. I'll be using the second leveling build myself, as I'm going to be making a Dogger build with the new Echo Cerberus weapon, and honestly it might be terrible, but I guess we'll find out. I'll be streaming ridiculous hours during the launch, so if you want to come check it out on how good it's going or how bad, come check out my Twitch or Kick linked in the description. Before we dive into the builds, I just want to say that none of these builds will assume 40 full Demonic Pact points. I'm seeing a lot of these endgame builds with 40 points, which require you to do every single task, and most of us can't do the special Jad challenge. So these 3 will be available for everybody, and you'll still have some spare points to play around with to make your build more flexible. For example, to make a hybrid build or to even spec into Thorns or anything you'd like. Before diving into the pacts, I want to say that the relics for all 3 of these builds are kind of the same apart from the second. You'll be taking Abundance as your tier 1, Woodsman as your tier 2, the third one doesn't really matter, the fourth one doesn't really matter either, but take Transmutation if you like having fun. The 5th one will be Larcenist, the 6th Culling Spree. We'll be reloading into Soul Harvest just to solve rune crafting, and as your tier 8 you'll be picking Minion or Flask of Fervor. There's not really a wrong pick with these last 2. Alright, let's finally get into it. Build 1. The beautiful thing about this build is that it's the simplest one. It doesn't require you to ever respec your tree, and it is endgame viable. The problem? It seems to fall off in the mid-game. Let me explain. You're going to start off with your first 2 relics being Abundance and Woodsman. Thanks to their synergy with Fletching, these 2 will help you speedrun to a magic shortbow. Once you have it, your build is online. With a simple 11 points, you can already get a lot out of this build. And when I click my endgame build like this, you can see nothing changes, and you can just build this tree out to make it stronger. It uses a combination of range echoes which get triggered by your fast hits with high accuracy from consistent hits. And that's basically it. As simple as you can get. The problem though, the magic shortbow we just got will be your best weapon until a twisted bow. That being said, we're going to TOA, and TOA is probably the easiest raid out of the 3, especially when you can grind it with friends. And once you get your first mega rare weapon scroll, this build gets really strong. Thanks to your regions, you'll have Missouri and the Venator Ring for more range damage. You'll have a raid to grind and a lot of flexibility in regions, since the only necessary region in this build is Desert. I would advise Taranwin Zeya Desert for Rigor, since this prayer gets buffed even more thanks to this node in the tree, or go for Taranwin Wildy Desert for more points, but you'll have to spend your tier 6 on getting the Arcane Grimoire, which unlocks the Rigor prayer. Unfortunately, the Bow of Ferdinand or the Webweaver Bow doesn't work for this build because it doesn't use ammo, and the ranged echoes only trigger when you regenerate ammo and not charges. Hence why the mid game kinda slacks with the magic short bow. For the next build, we're going to be using ranged again, and we're going to be able to hit 500 plus damage in one hit. We're going to be using the new crossbow. For this one, you'll be taking Desert Wilderness and Asgarnia, or Desert Wilderness Zeya if you don't take Grimoire, once again for the Rigor Prayer. This build focuses on doing ridiculously high damage in one shot with added ranged echoes. But on top of that, it will also heal you, making many grinds, frankly, pretty AFK. In the tree, it starts off like our early game Hunter's Crossbow build, but eventually starts branching out to the water magic tree. This because with our main weapon, the King's Crossbow from Echo King Black Dragon, the bow has a special feature, where it shoots 2 bolts instead of 1, the second bolt being an Ice Barrage. So, if we make it so that Ice Barrage counts as a water spell, and we make water spells heal us for 60%, we're essentially using 1 bolt for high damage and the other one to heal ourselves. The maximum DPS this build can do if everything triggers is over 500 damage in one hit. Our gear will look something like this if we picked Asgarnia instead of Zeya, or without the Fortified Missouri and with a regen bracelet if we're not taking the Grimoire as our tier 6, and so we take Zeya. In terms of tier 8, I would personally pick Guardian here because you're going to be attacking relatively slow, and the Guardian is going to be nice to finish off these bosses. And last but not least, probably the most complicated build. You've definitely heard about the 7-tile distance Bluetooth halberd by now, right? And you've also heard the term Blindbag, I'm assuming. Essentially, this new effect called Blindbag makes it so that every heavy weapon you have in your inventory, you can do more damage, and your Blindbag effect will proc more often. So stacking up your inventory with high-hitting heavy weapons is the play. For example, 5 gold swords. So your main hand will be a halberd, but not only will it be able to hit things from super far away, it will also have a chance to proc Blindbag and range echoes. You remember those echoes we were using in the previous 2 builds? Yeah, there's a node that makes melee hits also proc those. Using a couple of range nodes to buff those echoes, we're looking at a combination of 6 potential hits from 1 long-range halberd hit. Sounds complicated, but it's super easy to set up. The endgame tree looks like this and comes online pretty quickly. All you need to take care of is making sure your inventory has at least 5 hard-hitting heavy weapons and you're wearing the best halberd you can get. This build has a potential damage of over 850 damage and over 700 without Piety. This is once again dependent on whether or not you take the Arcane Grimoire to unlock Piety or you unlock Kandarin. It also has a bit less flexibility since it requires Moritania for the Noxious Halberd and potentially a Scythe as your Blindbag weapon, and also requires Taranwin for the Crystal Blessing and the Crystal Armor for extra melee DPS and accuracy. So you can either add Asgarnia for those 5 gold swords in your inventory for Blindbag, or Kandarin if you want to get Piety and get a free tier 6 relic so you don't have to pick Grimoire. Keep in mind, to get those last 2 builds online, you probably have to level as one of the 2 leveling builds I've mentioned, even though you can probably get the Blindbag build working with like a rune mace and rune pickaxes in the inventory or something. But again, for those 2, look into some leveling trees to get started. Before we end here, I want to give 2 honorable mentions to 2 other builds you guys might be interested in. One of them is the max DPS mage build by Mazar. Magic with elemental weaknesses is going to be by far the strongest thing this league. The DPS comes out to over 45 on basically every monster that has an elemental weakness, and is almost double the DPS of everything I've just mentioned. Magic with the Devil's Element and the new elemental trident is going to be the most damage this league, bar none. It's honestly not even close, but it's a little bit more complicated, so I'll send you the Mazar's video in the description. And the second build is Sardako's full tank build. Basically going full Justiciar and Adin's Bulwark, so you only do damage through recoil effects and reflection. This makes it incredibly easy to tank all the bosses while still doing very considerable damage, and it's definitely a really fun build to try out if you just want to do every boss this league. Once again, that is also in the description. I'll see you guys tomorrow on Twitch or Kick. Hope this helped a little bit, and I'll see you soon. Peace.